We ask that all participants today be respectful, be curious, be patient, speak for your own experiences, try to avoid jargon, be conscious of intent versus impact, take space and make space, and take care of yourself. We know we've got a long day of virtual programming, so if you need to get up, stretch your legs, get water, please do so. If we're using terms that you're not familiar with, please don't be afraid to ask in the chat. This is a great opportunity to learn. So, I'd also like, before we continue, to take a moment to give a heartfelt thank you to Decorah Bank and Trust, who is our sponsor for today. They have allowed us to come into their space um, and use their conference rooms. We have a little bit of spotty internet sometimes on the farm, so for events like this, we like to have a little bit more reliable Wi-Fi. So we just want to thank Decorah Bank and Trust for their hospitality and helping us make this event happen. So thank you, Decorah Bank and Trust, for your generosity and support. Now, I am so excited to introduce Lauren Beatty, whose presentation is titled The Hands That Hold Tomorrow, Women Keepers of Seeds, Preserver of Culture. Lauren is a program manager for Land Together, where she oversees the ecological education, cultural preservation, and leadership program at the Central California Women's Facility, the largest women's prison in the world. Lauren is a certified herbalist, educator, and advocate for environmental and social justice. And Lauren works at the intersection of storytelling, food justice, and ecological resilience. She's spearheaded initiatives like the CCWF-Alcatraz seed sharing project, which bridges landscapes of confinement and transformation. Through workshops, panels, and podcasts, Lauren amplifies the voices of the incarcerated women, fostering empowerment through gardening, seed saving, and reclaiming cultural agency. So if you have questions for Lauren throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the chat, and we'll have time at the end for a short Q&A. And with that, I am going to go ahead and spotlight Lauren here and hand it over to you. Lauren, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Meredith. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. So looking forward to this. Just so grateful to be here. Such a big conversations going on today. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having an engaging conversation. I'm much better at conversations when it comes to topics like these. It's much harder for me to speak at people. So yeah, I just look forward to engaging with you. So again, anything that you comes up regarding any of the work I do, any of the topics, I do ask and uplift. Please send it in the chat. Looking forward to it. Now, before we begin, I'm going to do something that's very traditional for myself in the way I start and create safe spaces by asking and inviting everyone to close your eyes, or if that doesn't feel comfortable, you can even gaze at the floor in front of you a few feet, a couple inches. Just really find that sense, that gaze to disappear and tune into the other senses. Now, if this isn't comfortable at all, that's okay. Just sit, listen, and feel into your body. Now, as we sit here together, I want you to imagine yourself as a seed, small, still, buried in darkness. You don't know what's coming, but you're not empty. No, you are not beginning from nothing. Inside of you is instruction, genetic memory passed down from every plant that came before you. You have never seen the sun, but you will know what to do when it calls you forward. Take a few more moments here, feeling that groundedness, that urge to move forward into the light. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Seeds carry, let me share my screen now. See, I'm much better at conversation. I forget I even have slides. All right, here we are. Can you see my screen okay? Yeah, awesome. Thank
Yes,
you.
perfect.
So, real quick, before we get into it, I want you to just go back for a moment, remembering yourself as a seed, feeling that energy, because seeds do carry epigenetic information, memory. They are shaped by fire, by flood, by drought, and time. Seeds don't forget, they adapt, they evolve, they remember what it took to survive, and they pass that memory on. And so do we. We are carriers of memory, of culture, of care. Women, especially, have carried this lineage through time, not just biologically, but in kitchens, gardens, recipes, in language, in song. And the earth, our Mother Earth, does this too. She stores memory in seed, in soil, in silence. She does it without fanfare because it is what she knows. So when I talk about seeds, I'm not just talking about food, no. I'm talking about stories. I'm talking about inheritance. I'm talking about continuity and survival. So this story begins with hands, much like you see here in this picture, hands that planted, hands that cooked, hands that hid seeds in folds of fabrics when it was time to flee. Most of the time, these hands are not praised in history books, right? They were not the ones who made, I'm sorry, they were not the ones that made it into even our education system most of the time, right? But they were the ones that made sure there was a future. They tilled soil and they braided knowledge into their hair. They remembered which plants nourished, which plants healed, and which ones could be trusted when possibly nothing else could. Often the ones who remembered were the ones who held the knowledge through storms, through silence, through separation. They were women. But today I talk about women as keepers of seeds and culture. And I want to say that I center women here today, not to erase anyone, but to honor the ones who are often, so often erased in our history books. Because for thousands of years, women who have carried the memory of how to feed and how to tend and how to protect life. And when I speak of women, I speak to something just much bigger. Much bigger than what we're thinking, right? Beyond gender, because gender is it isn't rigid, right? Nature shows us this. There are species of I'm sorry, there are species that change sex based on social structure, mushrooms that reproduce in thousands of combinations, flowers that carry both pollen and seed. So nature doesn't draw lines, it adapts and it transforms. So this talk, while centered on women, isn't just for women, it is for everyone. It is calling forward the feminine in all of us. That is the part in each of us that knows how to nourish, how to tend, and how to repair. So, women as seed keepers through time, across generations and geographies, women have carried the seed. Before agriculture had a name, women were saving what mattered. Across time and place, women have been the keepers of what keeps us alive: food, water, medicine, memory. In the Fertile Crescent, where agriculture began about 10,000 years ago, Archaeologists have uncovered clay figurines of women holding bundles of wheat, of seeds, rounded bellies full of potential. These weren't just fertility goddesses, they were symbols of abundance, of protection, of sustenance. Women as the embodiment of continuity. Because at that time, women weren't just participating in agriculture, they were actually leading it. They observed the land, they saved seed from the strongest plants, and they selected each seed for flavor, resilience, and timing, the important things. They, these women, 10,000 years ago, even more recently, were scientists before there were labs. They were ecologists before there were ever field guides. They were carriers of culture before there were archives. This work that we are doing today, that we are called to do now, is not new work. It's ancient, it's human, it's intrinsic, it's within us. And it's carried forward by that feminine quality in us that calls us to continue the survival of our species, of our culture, of the songs that we've spoken about, of the recipes, not new work. And the continuity hasn't broken. It just now comes in different forms. Because whether it's the Fertile Crescent or a mountain terrace in China or a prison garden in the Central Valley of California, the pattern holds, right? Women noticing what's thriving, saving what feeds, tending what might be needed tomorrow. Across cultures, across centuries, in conditions of exile, migration, colonization, survival, women have continued to carry the seed forward. Sometimes in their hair, sometimes in bundles, and sometimes in memory, and sometimes in soil, but always, always done intentionally because the act of saving a seed is so intentional. It's the process of watching a plant, maybe from seed, maybe from seedling, wherever you start, growing to its maturity, to fruition, to harvest, and then to allowing the plant to then move its life forward through seed. That watching of that plant is an intentional act. It's meditation. It's it's truly sacred. And it's done in so many different ways, but always intentionally. Because seed keeping isn't just about food, it's about future and it's about who gets to survive and how. So we have so many different examples of women and feminine energy across time and across different geographies that have traveled with seeds and pockets and hair, have created gardens and cracks and crevices and in spaces that aren't necessarily designed to sustain life. It's so hard to, in my research, especially in a talk that I could really expand on for hours and hours, to just choose a few stories. So, out of the few that I'll speak to as we lean into the work I do currently today, I just encourage you, if this in any way piques some curiosity or interest or intrigue, that this is just the beginning of a very big, long, hard, and sometimes um, sad, thing to look at and to read and to learn about. But this is the way we honor those who have done this hard work, who continue to carry this work forward. So again, this is just a peek into a very large conversation, one to happy to have with you after. You'll get my email. But yeah, I want to uplift that not everything that survives is meant to, right? Some things are carried because women, we think of the Fertile Crescent. I think of this idea of fertile land and agriculture and how farming today in America, because that's where I grew up, right? I grew up in Central Valley of California. I grew up where I'm surrounded by monoculture, I live behind me, we got almonds, pistachios, oranges. I've grown up around chemical agriculture. And so it's not new to me, this idea of tending to space. What was new to me was coming into this years ago as I started kind of researching and really coming into this energy myself, realizing that my world was limited. My perspective had been limited based off of where I lived, as many of us, as all of us are, right? I've been enculturated. And I thought a farmer for me was probably a older white guy. He drove a truck, possibly wore some overalls, and maybe had a dog named Bingo. And that's what I think of farming in the US, but that isn't farming. And we are missing a huge piece of what it is to cultivate land here. And women haven't just saved seed in abundance, they saved it in exile, in confinement, in resistance. Long before ships crossed the Atlantic, West African women specifically were farmers. They knew the rains, the rhythms, the seeds, they knew the land. And of course, during the transatlantic slave trade, more than 12 million Africans were forcibly taken from their homelands and shipped across the Atlantic. A lot of these were women who were actually targeted, um, who knew the cultivation processes of rice and came from the area which rice grew and was fertile. So these women were targeted for their knowledge to bring it over to the Americas to help build our land. So they were brought over here, taken away from their culture, but culture survived. Some African women braided seeds into their hair, were forced onto ships. Seeds such as rice, okra, black-eyed peas, and then once on plantations, of course, the limited access to land to be able to grow these things was, of course, the norm at the time. But even after hours and hours of brutal, long labor, they would return to tiny plots behind their quarters where they'd plant. They passed these seeds between hands, tucked them in cloth, hid them in corners. They cultivated foods which became the foundation of what we know now as our Southern cuisine. But these women didn't just preserve the seeds. No, they preserved knowledge of how to grow, how to cook, how to feed under impossible conditions. They preserved cultural identity and passed it down. During the Trail of Tears in the 1830s, the US government forcibly displaced 16,000 Cherokee people from their homelands. More than 4,000 died along the way. But the Cherokee women carried seeds. They carried corn, beans, squash, what we know today as the Three Sisters. They understood that without seed, there was no survival. They carried these thousands of miles through hunger, through grief, through different seasons. And when they finally arrived in unfamiliar territory, they planted what they had saved. The Trail of Tears wasn't just a forced migration, it was forced agricultural displacement. When Cherokee women carried the seeds, they weren't just preserving seeds for their family, they were carrying forward an entire agricultural ecosystem. See, the Cherokee Native Americans population actually had amazing, extensive agro ecosystems that naturally were entwined and in their culture. And when we came and colonized land, we saw this, right? We saw the way they added the ash into, the moss, into the corn. They saw the way that they tended to the land, and with colonization, they saw it and they wanted it for themselves. But with and through that oppression, through the exile and the resistance, and through the oppression, they resisted, and much of what they carried survived with them and their culture. Much of what we know today as American farming crop rotation, intercropping, biodiversity, seed selection comes from indigenous foodways, traditional ecological knowledge. And yet, US agricultural systems erase the people while absorbing the practice. Another example is southern China. Hani women have cultivated rice for over 1,300 years. This is a matrilineal tradition, so passed on from generation of women to daughters to granddaughters. They farm in terraced systems that stretch across steep terrains. Each variety of rice is adapted to a specific altitude, water level, and season. So intentionally done. They don't just grow rice, however. They manage entire agro ecosystems where forests, paddies, and villages operate in harmony. The century old practice has faced challenges throughout time: land reform, policy shifts, development pressure, and now climate instability add another layer of uncertainty. But the instinct to protect life, to save seed, to carry culture, it doesn't disappear under pressure. And if anything, it sharpens. It shows up in new places, maybe like the Central California Women's Facility, the prison in the Central Valley that I volunteer at. Long before I ever stepped inside the women's prison, there was no program, no gardening program or garden beds, but there was a group of women determined to spread seed, grass seed they had found onto bare ground. These women at the time, oh, I'm sorry, go back. These women at the time weren't necessarily trying to grow a garden. They were just trying to bring green to a place that was completely desolate. Think bare grounds, concrete walls, wired fences, no life, no softness. Some of these women serving life without parole, so these are their forever homes, could not stand to live in a place that did not breathe life into it in some way. This is their home. And they found a way by finding contraband, quote unquote, finding, and starting and spreading the seed just to bring in grass. You have to understand here the soil. The soil in the Central Valley is extremely hard. It's Central Valley clay. It's hard pan in most places, it's compacted, it's dry, layered with, years of chemical agricultural just poison in the ground. It's dirt and not soil yet. It doesn't invite growth. And as you possibly can already sense, neither does a prison. But they scattered that seed anyways, determined to let it grow, that intuition inside of them to bring forth life. Another woman told me that she had been 15 years incarcerated, had shared in a story how in days when they first started getting access to fresh food, which was very rare, far and few between, maybe a piece of fruit like an apple on the tray, or maybe a tomato inside of a small, um, you know, dinner that they have. They would actually save the seeds from those things. Not sure if they were even fertile, if they would even grow anything. And they would confiscate them because if you cannot bring anything out of the chow hall, tuck them into corners, right? These save them in napkins, put them in their pocket. They did everything they could to grow. They planted in containers. They started gardens behind bushes because it wasn't allowed, it was contraband. They would find tiny scraps of earth. And when I came in, I didn't necessarily start anything. I joined something. The women, oh, I'm sorry, I clicked my slides. I'm bad at that. The women were already doing something. They were already tending to the land. They were already remembering. And so I just came in to help support that. Now, the thing is that Land Together, the nonprofit that I work for, has been running land-based education, horticultural therapy programs, and skill-based programs in California prisons for over 20 years. We are currently in 9 prisons throughout California on 11 yards now, almost 12. And and expanding every year. So when we came in, our first garden we ever arrived at was the men's prison in San Quentin. We were only allowed to plant flowers behind the gate. We are not allowed to harvest anything from it, not allowed to take a plant, take a flower, taste anything, put anything in the mouth, can grow anything edible. But a lot has changed along the way. Our program now is a huge part of the prison. We have presence. We have a lot of the gardening. We have presence and we have brought a lot of access and necessary in a place that doesn't really support these kinds of really beautiful programs. But a lot of the gardening happens when I'm not there outside of structured hours. These women, this is their home. This is where they live. So they're out there early mornings during yard time when they need a break from being cooped inside when 8 people live inside a small room. So they come to these spaces to find solitude, to find rest, to find a sense of control where they have none. And we're lucky that now we have gardens on pretty much every yard. Not official still, not always supported, but they're there. The officers don't tear them down like they used to. They see the women out front in the yard plot, and they usually don't give them a hard time. They see them pulling weeds, building berms, planting, saving seeds. And with our seed saving, we've also had the opportunity to help restore our public lands. The work inside the prison is centered on not only food justice, but also on native gardens and restoration of biodiversity. Chowchilla, where the prison is, the women's prison that I work at, is was years and years formerly a wetlands. It had, imagine, tule reeds, marsh birds, seasonal abundance, and much of that now is lost, drained, scraped, poisoned. But we have seen and watched the soil shift. We've watched the Bermuda grass. Oh, and if you know Bermuda grass, oh, we've watched it slowly been pushed back by native grasses, especially our California native grass, the purple needle grass. Pollinators have returned. We have California bumblebees, carpenter bees, other native bees, as well, other native insects. And last year, in our milkweed patch we've been cultivating for the past 3 years, I saw our first monarch butterfly. Oh no, I'm gonna tear up. Our first monarch butterfly stopped by. 3 animals, all choosing to come to this space to make it their home. It inspires our participants to look around them and truly see that what they're doing is beyond just planting in the ground. It's saving species, it's calling in what was, and it's bringing back what should be. When we plant milkweed, poppy, sage, we're not just tending to, there we go. We're not just tending to a garden, no. We're remembering what the land used to be, and we're asking for it to return. Here in this picture, in these pictures, you can see some of our amazing participants standing in the garden there at the top right corner. That's our main yard garden. You can see the lupins in front of us, our amazing wildflowers that grow back every year. Our like pride and joy. We love when they pop up. They just bring so much life. It's different seasons too. We can see more fertile seasons as well as maybe more desolate. Our Central Valley gets up to 115 in the summer. So with little access to water, and especially with political water issues, we definitely have our challenges, but we move through. And not only that, but with the work that we're doing, we partner with amazing people. My slides are out of order. I'm sorry, you guys. We partner with amazing people who are doing the same work, who intentions lie in the same scope as we do. Who are very deeply connected and care about the land, and that's what we do with Alcatraz. So Alcatraz, if you don't know, is one of the most well-known prisons in the United States. It is operated as a federal penitentiary from 1934 to 1963. Before that, it was a military prison, and it has always been Ohlone land. At Alcatraz, the connection that we have is something really real. It's on the island. A site. It was also a site of a protest and reclamation. In 1969, indigenous activists occupied the land for 19 months, demanding justice for stolen land and broken treaties. Here you see the Alcatraz Garden. On the top right corner, you can see that gardens as it once was, tended by Elliot Meichener, an incarcerated man at the time. And these gardens are being restored and expanded by Sheila Fritz and her team at the Golden Gate Parks Conservancy. She's right here, if you can see my little cursor, sharing with us the amazing rich history of the gardens in Alcatraz. We've on the island too, they built amazing, amazing gardens, award-winning compost. They have really worked with the land to cultivate native plants and honor the layered history of the land itself. Our contribution with the women is that last year, our plants and our seeds, which we've been working to save, were planted on Alcatraz Island. Lupin, California poppies, grown by our CCWF participants, grown in confinement, grown by formerly incarcerated women, and sown into the soil of a former prison. Some of the same hands that once tended these seeds behind the fence were now planting them on the rock, as they call Alcatraz. So Sol, right here, Marcado, she is our former participant. She is a former LWAP, life without parole. She accessed our program, came to it in 2019, and was released actually in 2020. So Sol now works with us, volunteers, as well as helps us bridge our amazing work of seed saving with the Bay Area and with also Planting Justice, a organization that helps formerly incarcerated population and at-risk youth, an amazing organization as well. You can see down here in the left corner, I want to point out, this is from an article, and I believe we're going to share that article if you enjoy reading it, from San Francisco Gate, the SF Gate. Right here is our garden, part of our garden, as you can see it. We have our amazing park ranger, Oliver, who carried these plants from our garden in Chowchilla onto BART, onto the boat, onto the island. Amazing trek of these plants where they now grow and are thriving. So our seed saving doesn't end at the gate. It travels across oceans. It builds bridges, and it builds bridges between confinement and care, between memory and soil. Most of the work that we do and the work that I encourage in our participants and the people around me is to connect to the garden in a personal way, because we are interconnected with it. And when we tend to it, we tend to ourselves, and vice versa. Seed work is land work, and land work is restoration. And for us, it's also liberation. When we plant these seeds, we're restoring ecosystems, we're restoring relationships. And when the same people who have been separated from the land are given a chance to heal it, something shifts. So what do we lose when we forget? When I was really gathering this is like the beginning of a book for me. I definitely need to expand this, and I have so much more to share, and I'm probably way past time. I apologize. My biggest, when I'm sharing something, is, okay, what is the purpose of sharing this? Am I teaching something? What it for something, right? Reminder. And I thought, well, if we're here to remember about the past, right? Today we're talking and focusing on the past that brings us here to the present. Well, what are we losing when we forget? We lose biodiversity. More than 75% of seed varieties gone in the last century alone. We lose resilience because monoculture isn't just a farming method, it's a forgetting. We are forgetting how plants protect one another, of how biodiversity keeps ecosystems alive. We lose food that was medicine. We lose food that was memory. Food that carried its name, the names of people and places no longer spoken. We lose knowledge that isn't written in books, knowledge held in ritual, in oral traditions, in taste, and we lose language. The names for seeds and soils and seasons that shaped who we are. We lose the possibility of rootedness in a world that wants us to consume without remembering. When we forget the people, especially women, who carried all of this forward through enslavement, through exile, through silence, through survival, we lose the very thread that ties us to continuity. But, but when we remember, the seed wakes up. It's never seen the sun, but it knows how to reach for it when it comes. So, oops, we remember on purpose. We tend what nourishes and we pass on what matters. And this is how the story survives in our hands, in our soil, in the seeds we save, in the futures we refuse to forget. But this isn't just a reflection on the past, it's a reckoning. Today, we are being asked to see clearly and urgently what must be saved before it's in danger. Here today at the Seed Savers Exchange Conference, we're focusing on past, but looking backwards is no use to us, right? Unless we use it to help us shape a better future. So the past shows us not just what was lost, but what was saved and what was protected. The question isn't whether we will face loss again, because we will, and we are. The question is, what will we do differently because we remember? We are the hands that hold tomorrow, and the past is asking us today, what will you protect while it's still alive? I am so grateful and thankful for you holding space with me, for honoring the stories of women, past and present. Thank you so much. I'd love to open it for Q&A. Sorry
Yes.
if I went over time.
No, you're perfect. Don't worry, Lauren. Thank you. That was so inspiring. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions, and I have so many that were rolling around in my head. So thank you, because I don't know that we'll get to everything. Thank you for sharing your email. For everyone live with us today that is in the chat, we will also be sharing it with people watching the recording later. But that is lauren@landtogether.org. Thank you so much for being here. So, one of the first questions that I had, it looks like Five Shot also has it. Are there other programs like this in other states? I'll admit, the only other time I've heard or it's been brought to my attention about gardens in prisons or incarcerations is when I watched the Martha Stewart documentary recently and then your presentation. So, yes, I'm very curious. Seems like incredible work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. There is definitely programs across the United States doing this. I unfortunately don't have all the names, and it is, but it just what you said, I'd really like to uplift that. It's honestly in the shadows, just kind of like
Mhm.
what I spoke to now. So really, this work, especially incarcerated populations, we know prisons are often pushed into rural areas. They're often the people left behind and forgotten, men, women, whatever. And so I would just encourage you all, if you are curious, like just really look and Google, and I'm sure you'll find something. But
Yeah.
we are currently trying to expand across states, and we have a lot of interest. So
Yeah,
yes.
wonderful. And I'm also just kind of curious about the practical side. So are you helping with like sharing knowledge of gardening skills or what, yeah, what does that kind of
Yeah,
look like from your
yeah,
end?
definitely. Yep. both things. So
Mhm,
I
mhm.
do a lot at the women's prison. I actually teach, like, we teach about, we have a 4 mark arc model. So I teach about systems, I teach practical hands-on skills. We have a permaculture style, traditional
Yeah,
ecological knowledge is what I like to reference to, style curriculum. So it's hands-on, it's also internal, like gardening, inner gardening. We connect inner and outer gardening. So it's this dialogue of um, weeding, right? What is a weed? Yet a misplaced plant, right? And all the weeds in our
mhm.
life and how they're teaching us stories of ourselves and mirroring and all the wonderful things. So, yeah, it's a lot of hands on and then also great curriculum that teaches about systems and seed saving and all the things.
Wonderful. Yeah, there's just a lot of enthusiasm in the chat about the beautiful presentation and how inspiring it was. So this is what I really love about this virtual programming is being able to spotlight other work that's being done in other places and yeah, bring it to light and just this is just the beginning and I hope people can continue to explore and learn about other programs like yours and reach out to you and learn more about Land Together as well.
Great. Yes. Thank you so much.
And so we are about at time here. So I am going to share my screen real quick. We've got another surprise for our participants today. So Seed Savers Exchange, if you don't know already, we are celebrating 50 years in 2025 of our founding. And we have lots of events throughout the year, so I encourage you to go visit our website. But also you can support us and by visiting our shop. So we have lots of really amazing merchandise. You can see the 50th anniversary mug there. We have t-shirts, tools. We have, of course, seeds from our collection that our farm team and partners have worked so hard and so many years to regenerate, bring from the seed bank into our catalog. And it's your purchase actually helps support the Seed Savers Exchange mission. We are not a seed company. We are a member supported nonprofit. Everything that people purchase from Seed Savers Exchange goes back to help us work on our preservation and regeneration efforts. So, and today we'll follow up with an email, but you can save 10% if you go to our shop, use the code VC 2025-10. So virtual conference 2025, 10% off. That's how you remember. And there are some exclusions. No bulk seed, not eligible for events, but you can get off individual seed packets. Again, mugs, merchandise, tools. So we hope that you'll go and support us that way too. And yeah, thank you again, Lauren, for everything that you've done and continue to do your work and being here today. And then our next session, we're going to take a little bit of a lunch break. So we've got some time. We've got about an hour and 15 minutes, and we will be back again. For the next session will be Seeds of Legacy, Honoring Ancestral Wisdom in Modern Seed Saving. So we hope everyone will take a little break and join us in about an hour and 15 minutes. So thank you so much.